All right, hello, Facebook world. I have today with me on the line a licensed realtor in Michigan, and we are going to go through some questions that y'all need to be asking a potential realtor that you're looking to hire. We're going to go through some questions, why you should be asking them, and Chris is going to answer them in the best he can with his experience and knowledge of the real estate world. So good morning or good afternoon, whatever time of day you're asking or watching this video. Hi, Chris. How you doing?
Doing very well. Good morning, and thanks for having me here.
Thanks for being here. We appreciate it. So I'm going to pose some questions for Chris here, and these are things that whoever's looking to get a real estate agent should be either, you can get some of these questions from the internet. There are lots of articles written, but Chris is going to dive into why they're important to ask. So the first question is, how long has your realtor that you're looking at hiring, how long has he been a real estate agent? Chris, why would that be important?
Well, it starts to speak to years of experience and the likelihood that they've had a lot of experience. And it's a very common question that I get often. I think a slightly better question, or a question that I think a buyer or seller should delve into right after having that conversation with that question is, are you a full-time realtor, and is this your only means of income? Uh, that I think will speak to not just their years in the industry, but their level of experience that they can support themselves and their families just from this income versus being dual income and having their attention and loyalty split between you as a client and other obligations from a potentially different employer.
Okay. So that makes sense, right? Someone that's more committed has more time to devote to their clients versus someone who's just doing it part-time or on the side or as a kind of a weekend hobby. That makes complete sense. Um, okay, so a good follow-up question are what types of you hear the term real estate agent versus a broker. What are the differences in Michigan with the licensing and the agent versus the broker role?
They're not that much different. To be a broker, an agent must have been licensed at least 3 years and have completed a certain number of transactions. And the state has requirements as to how many transactions over a rolling calendar year and things of that nature. So it speaks to the sort of the first question as to have they met certain qualifications. It's just kind of nice to see that someone's been a broker or is a broker, but it's not necessarily the begin all and end all, because there are plenty of agents that are incredibly knowledgeable because they are full-time agents in the industry for 15, 20 or more years, but just chose never to take on necessarily the liability of being a broker and being able to open up their own shop if they so chose.
So you're saying maybe looking at overall time would be a better principle to follow than necessarily an agent versus a broker, because you could have a broker that's fairly new, but an agent that has been in the industry for 40 plus years that might have more experience at that point in their career. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Absolutely, that is a great summary of it.
Okay. So then another common question would be is what percentage of your clients are buyers versus sellers? What distinction should a client be making when they're looking for that real estate agent, when they're asking that question? Why is that important?
It's good because it helps, again, as a consumer looking to hire a professional, find out what is their overall business operating principles, and what are they well versed in. It just helps reassure you as a consumer that that agent has the credentials and experience and relationships to help you achieve the goals that you're trying to accomplish.
Okay. So yeah, obviously you might not necessarily want someone who only deals in a seller's capacity if you're looking to buy a property.
Correct. I mean, ideally, you would like to find an agent that has a good mix of business. That way, they're up on the current trends of potential hangups from both perspectives of the transaction. Now, is that to say that someone that works primarily as a buyer's agent is incapable of being a very good listing agent? No, not necessarily, but the question is important to be able to find out what is the book of business. Is there a reason they prefer to work with a buyer versus a seller or vice versa? And are they capable of handling what you need, and how would they accomplish that? It really just helps in a non-threatening way open that conversation up.
Okay. And then why, I've seen this question asked before, but why would you ask your potential realtor what neighborhoods you primarily work in? Because
You know, it's a good,
isn't your license, you can sell homes all throughout Michigan, right?
okay, yes, you bring up a good point about Michigan licensing. Once someone gets a Michigan sales license for real estate, they are licensed throughout the entire state.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean I'm based out of Macomb County. And do I work in surrounding counties? Yes. And I'm more than happy to share with my clients during our interview and consultation meetings which counties those are and which neighborhoods and cities within those counties I work in. Just because I can travel to Sanilac County, which is about a 90-minute drive one way for me, I don't cover all of Sanilac County. I cover very specific spots merely because I have my reasons.
Mhm.
So it's good to find out what are the local areas you work in, and then a really good follow-up question after that natural conversation of, well, what neighbors do you work in? The question I would ask if I was interviewing a potential realtor is, why have you chosen those neighborhoods, those municipalities, those cities?
Okay. And what would some reasons be for a realtor choosing maybe one city over a different, even if it's in the same county?
Oh, that's a great question. So in Macomb County, some realtors don't want to work in certain municipalities because of the certificate of occupancy requirements.
Okay.
They just don't, they feel like it's a hassle and they don't want to go through that. Well, okay. And if you're looking to move into that particular city, that's probably not the right realtor for you. And you should thank them for their time and forthrightness about that. It could be something they live there. So they know it in and out, and they're able to tell you, you know, this street has getting ready to have sewer repairs. So if you buy on this particular street, just know the infrastructure is going to be getting replaced your first summer in the home. You know, that might be something you want to know.
Yeah, right.
Um, Things of that nature, right? And it could be because they grew up in that area and they still, or they have family and they're in that area a lot and they know it like the back of their
Okay, so really now overall knowledge of the workings of that city or um, the ordinances. Okay. So let's see. Would you ever say, well, I guess we kind of already answered this. Is it relevant for a client to know how many homes an agent has closed in that neighborhood that they're maybe trying to sell a house in? So my client or your client is looking to sell a house in a specific neighborhood. Is it relevant for the agent that they're going to hire to have dealt specifically in that neighborhood versus the county or even in that city?
Maybe, but not necessarily. I think if you're really looking at that based on the conversation of the first part of that question that we had, you know, it sounds like it's a bit of a two-parter.
Right.
As well as it goes to a specific, you know, hey, how do you work within these 4 streets in this 1 square mile?
Mhm.
I think the first part of this question lends to this, like maybe they have never sold within those 4 corners, but they've
Mhm.
worked a lot around the surrounding area.
Mhm.
You can make a good judgment call from there. Also, you could get a conversation where, what does the agent do for due diligence to protect you contractually, and as well as understanding the municipal guidelines and how to allow you to perform your own due diligence as a consumer. That would be really huge. So maybe they've never sold within that 4 block square,
Mhm.
but they know how to help you and have enough time and protect you contractually to know that you're making a good decision about purchasing within that 4 block square. That could be a very, very helpful bit of information, knowing that you're going to be protected while they're going through your transition.
Okay. And then why this is kind of switching gears. We're not necessarily looking at the neighborhood, but when you're asking your potential agent what marketing tools that they have access to in helping you either buy or sell a home. Why would that be important, or what tools do you guys have in your toolbox that you could tell us a little bit about?
That's really, really important, because you want to make sure that the agent you are hiring
Hmm.
has the tools and in capacities and relationships, because marketing could be a relationship. In some markets, your agent is going to have to really work hard to market the buyer. And how do they do that?
Hmm.
In this market currently that we're in the midst of the COVID-19 shutdown, stay in place order, realtors and brokers are considered non-essential by the governor's order here in Michigan. Therefore, you're stay at home. Okay, well, if the realtor's marketing strategy to list and sell, help you sell your home and market your home, the strategy of just dropping a sign in the front yard is really ineffective in this marketplace.
Right.
So, what are you expecting from your realtor, and what solutions can they present in this marketplace to help you be successful? Because admittedly, showings are still happening. Properties are still going under contract, even in the midst of
Hmm.
our stay home, stay safe. Some realtors have got it figured out. Others are learning it.
Hmm.
Those are good questions to ask, because it helps identify, does your realtor have the solutions and relationships in place to help you be successful?
Right. So it sounds like to me, it's not necessarily what the agent is doing and what they've done in the past, but what the agent is willing to do based on what the market is demanding at the time. So, like you gave the example of the COVID-19, right? If you have an
Mhm.
agent that's used to only dropping signs to sell a house, then that is going, it's going to take a long time for you to sell your house, right? But if you have an agent that's willing to put stuff on Facebook or whatever social media or online tools, then your house is likely to sell a lot faster.
Absolutely. And the technology is going to be even more paramount today in our current scenario selling market than it
Mhm.
has been ever in the past.
Agreed. I agree with that. Okay. So what about as far as if I'm going to be looking for an agent and I'm going to purchase a home, and I want to know how quickly can you as an agent typically get me into a home to view um, to view a house that I might want to put an offer in on. What does that look like as far as time frame goes?
Wow, yeah, that's what I call a sword question. It's double-edged and sharp on both sides, you know? I mean, um, uh, it's be care, because if an agent is able to show you a house in 5 minutes,
Hmm.
well, does that mean the agent is brand spanking new,
Hmm.
has no book of business currently, and has no real commitments and obligations, taking care of current clients on their calendar? So they're available to you 24 hours a day, in essence, right?
Hmm.
Um, so be careful of that. But at the same token, if an agent says, I'm booking my calendar out 3 days in advance, that doesn't mean that they're inattentive either or unable to accommodate you. Um, so it's a good question to kind of create a conversation about, well, how available are you? What kind of commitments do you have? It kind of goes back to that first question, part B of, gosh, can you show me a house within 24 hours of my asking? Well, no, I'm at working part time at wherever for the next three
Hmm.
days. Oh, okay. You
Hmm.
know,
Okay, that's good. Those are some kind of inadvertent ways of figuring out if how committed your realtor is, or if they're full time or part time, without bluntly asking them that. It's like little red
yeah,
flags that you
absolutely. How
know
committed is your realtor? And at the same token, um, during this type of questioning, this part of the conversation of the interview process, if you're working with an agent, or broker that is experienced and has a book of business and a track record of success, as a consumer, make no mistake, they're interviewing you just as much, if not more, than you are them.
of. Hmm.
So be careful, and cautious in this conversation. I mean, be forthright,
Hmm.
but just be aware that if the agent doesn't have good feelings about you, and it comes off as though you have unrealistic expectations as a consumer and you expect to see a property within the hour of your request, well, you may not be working with that very qualified realtor because you have un, you know, unrealistic demands.
Hmm. Hmm. Now, on the opposite spectrum, have you ever dealt with, or is this a scenario that's happened where maybe there is that realtor that has a solid book of business, they've been in the industry for a while, but they get a really demanding client that is willing to pay them an extra fee, or a higher hourly rate, um, if they're willing to do those quick showings, right, within 24 hours, or maybe you guys are under contract for, something like that. Can people do that, or is that not really the norm in the industry?
Potentially. I mean, everything is negotiable, right? I mean, in real estate, one of our favorite answers is, well, it depends. And,
Yeah, right.
we talk about, well, and what does it depend on? Terms and conditions, and this is kind of what you're describing here. Um, it's possible. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Um, so yeah, it is certainly possible. And be aware that some of the solutions that come up with that, some of the terms for those conditions might be, you might be able to see the house within an hour, but it just might not be with that exact agent, because maybe they're finding an agent to open the door that has that time slot available,
Mhm.
and they're going to pay and compensate that agent, which is where it comes back to the consumer. Can they pay to get in? Well, sure, it just depends.
Okay. Okay. That's good to know for those who really are antsy and aren't, they need to get in quickly. But okay. So, speaking of working with the client, how long does it typically take, even, um, if it's a buyer or seller well, I guess we'll stick with buyers, right? Let's narrow it down a little bit. How long would you usually work with a buyer from the first viewing until closing?
Okay, as a good sword question as well,
Mhm.
uh, because again, it depends on some of the terms going along with
Mhm.
along with that scenario. Some realtors spend an extremely amount of time, and walking around with a buyer, you hear, "Oh my gosh, I love my realtor. They showed me 100 houses." Um, and that's great, but why? I think the question is a better good question is why? Why did that particular client need to see 100 homes with that agent? Was it because the agent's just inexperienced and could not zero in on the buyer's specific needs, and it took 90 houses to finally realize what the buyer was really looking for?
Mm.
And that can be incredibly painful financially, especially in an accelerated seller's market. Because every day that you spend looking at a house, it's going to cost you more money. Every
Right.
month that passes is going to cost you more money as a buyer. Conversely, don't get turned off if an agent doesn't spend a lot of time. Some agents, um, their average initial showing to contract that will close is less than 2 dozen homes.
Right.
That doesn't mean that the agent is a browbeater and creating buyer's remorse because they're forcing a buyer into a home. It could just be maybe that particular agent has a very good initial buyer's consultation, and the first few tours are not one and two showing homes. They're out looking at 3 or 4 or 5 homes, educating the buyer, educating the consumer as to structure styles, size styles, layout differences in a subdivision. So this lends a good question to: does the agent do an initial buyer consultation to make a buyer's time more efficient while out shopping in a very expensive marketplace? I mean, homes are probably the largest, most expensive asset any one individual will acquire in their lifetime.
Mhm.
And how good are they at asking questions to help you be efficient?
Okay. No, those are really good points. Efficiency is key. Um, Helps keep costs down and helps people getting frustrated. I don't want to see 50 to 90 homes just to find the right home, right? I want the realtor to pinpoint on what I'm telling him or her, and what I want in a home, and then them being able to do their job and finding that home. So that's good. Um, So speaking of, let's say that we find a couple homes that we like, and maybe we get a home inspection and some issues come back, right? Maybe the plumbing is bad or a furnace needs to be put in. How important is it for an agent, a real estate agent, to have a book or a list of vendors that they trust that can come in and do some work? Do you personally have a list of vendors? You make recommendations to your clients, stuff like that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And at the same token, I'm consistently adding to my vendors list
Mhm.
because oftentimes my clients will bring to me a very valuable and trusted professional, and which is a valuable resource. Because yes, people think this is a house and a real estate business, but above and beyond that, it's a relationship business. If you're going to look to me to help you find your solution to find a home, and maybe in your home inspection, using your example, there's a couple of minor issues that with good, solid recommendations from a professional to address that, you're okay with that. Goodness, you need to have a trusted vendors list because no one plumber is the begin all end all. And it's
Mhm.
good for your realtor to have a diversified list in each category: plumbing, electrical, foundation, etc. Right? Because no one contractor is available all the time, and no one contractor is everything. Right? I have a gentleman in my vendors list. If you just want the sewer scoped, that's all he does.
Mhm.
He's cheap, he's fast, and he gives you a DVD that shows you exactly what it is that he looked at. But what if there's a clog in it? Well, that's not Reggie. Don't look to Reggie to take care of that for you. That's not what he does. You
Right.
need to, so now what? If he was the only one in my vendors list, what am I gonna do?
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's good. So even contract, like you said, contractors are not available all the time, and so yeah, that's good. Okay, so what would be one thing a client should avoid in the home buying or selling process? Like, what sticks out to you over all the years of your experience? What should they avoid when either selecting an agent or going to purchase or sell a home?
Number one for buyers is do not extend new credit. It's exciting. You have found the home of your dreams. There was nothing wrong in the home inspection. You got a good value. The appraisal came in, nicely above your purchase price. And now you run to the local store and you're picking out paint and your drapes and your furniture and your appliances, and you're offered 10% off if you open a brand new credit card at the store. That is the worst thing you can do. The big takeaway from there is have a plan with your lender and follow your lender's advice. There's nothing worse than seeing a couple just go into tears because their dreams of home ownership have been absolutely decimated because they've thrown off their DTI ratios because they went and bought the new furniture for the family room. And it happens. So number one for buyers, don't extend new credit. Wait until you close. Then you can have it on reserve at the store, but pay for it after you close. Um, for sellers, we know you love your home, and we know you know your home better than anyone else. As a seller, you know how your home moves, how it breathes, how it creaks, what special features are convenient about it, and you think you're going to be home and show it better than anyone walking through the home. And it is the worst thing you can do because now the buyers feel intimidated, they're nervous, they're afraid to explore and see themselves in the home, they're afraid to walk through it as if it was potentially their own. I mean, yes, the buyers are respectful as guests, but they become timid and shy when a seller is there. And I know the seller's coming from a perspective of assisting and
Mhm.
showcasing,
Mhm.
but it's intimidating to a buyer that doesn't know them. And they just walked through 3 homes where the sellers were gone, and they come to yours and see you there.
Mhm.
So don't be home as a seller.
Okay, that's I would have never thought of that myself. You come from the mindset of, yeah, you would want someone that, has lived in the house and can show you all the things, but on the flip side of that, they're also showing you everything, right? They're showing you the little things that they've noticed that you might gloss over that really aren't important, but they notice them because they've lived there for so long. So that's a very helpful tip there. I guess.
Right. Let the buyers explore to your, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, what were you gonna say?
I was going to say, to your point, let the buyers explore and fall in love with the things that are important to them and not be distracted by what's important to the seller who's home, shuffling them quickly from room to room to room.
Right.
Yeah,
That's a great summary there. Um, okay. So another question would be is when you're looking for an agent, how important is it to just work solely with the agent or the agent and their team? So the question might be phrased as, will I be working with you directly or you and your team?
Ooh, you really like the sword questions, don't you? These ones, but that is a good question. I think that was going to boil down to personal preference from the buyer.
Mhm.
And what is the goal and the point of the question? I mean, if you're a consumer that highly values a single point relationship, if you're going to get shuffled off to a different team member, whether you're a buyer or a seller, because
Mhm.
there are teams for both, um, wow, you might really struggle through that transaction, even though everything was done very, very well. You will feel as though you were less than successful because you value single point relationships, and every stage of the transaction has a new face, new name, new phone number.
Mhm.
That could be very infuriating. So if you don't want that, that's a very important question to ask. Conversely, um, what's the quality of the team? It helps you experience, well, how many team members do you have, and how often will I be shuffled around, or why do you need so many team members? If you've got a team and you're buying into the quote unquote rainmaker, or the leader of the team, are you really ever going to work with the leader? That's a good question.
Mm.
So yeah, it'll help you set expectations and help you gauge for yourself what kind of experience are you willing to go through, and what kind of experience versus what kind of experience are you looking for.
Okay. That's a good point. Yeah, and even I'm thinking about the team aspect, as far as maybe that buyer that really is in a pinch and maybe is moving from a different state into Michigan and they are really on a time crunch, maybe working with a team could be more efficient because you are able to be passed to a team member that's available when you need them versus I'm only working with one realtor who may have a large book of business that has to schedule me out 3-4 days and can't get to me right away. So that's something maybe, that you could ask within that is how responsive is the team versus how responsive is just the potential one realtor that you're going to work with. But
Absolutely. And on the flip side of that same coin, some people are willing to wait 3 and 4 days. There's certainly been times in my own personal calendar where I'm like, do you know what house you want to see on Friday? Well, no, I don't know. My folks will say, no, I don't know until 2 o'clock on the day, that I know, I'm looking at 2 o'clock on my lunch break at what properties I want to look at 6 o'clock.
mhm,
Then, okay, great. If you know that you're open and available on Friday afternoon, why don't we just schedule it now? So just because an agent is scheduling out 2 and 3 days doesn't mean they're incapable of being available before then.
mhm,
Uh, so there is that. And on the team level, um, you might have someone that got their license that afternoon showing you a house that evening. That is a reality in the real estate world. Once you pass the state exam and get your license, you can go start selling real estate 5 minutes later. So
mhm.
on a team environment, which is new agents generally go to a team. So that would be another good follow-up question. What kind of team do you have? How experienced are they? And why do you have a team, or why do you not have a team?
Mm. Okay. And then last, and you don't necessarily have to speak to your personal fee schedule, but generally, how do realtor fees work in Michigan? How do realtors set their structure up for fees?
I heard the word fees. My screen kind of froze up there for a minute. I kind of
Okay.
lost it. What was the question, Joe?
Yeah, the question is generally how do realtors set their fee structure up in Michigan? or at least in your experience? And like I said, you don't have to necessarily divulge how you do it, but what is the general practice?
Okay. Yeah, good. That's a good question because you want to make sure that the realtor understands the financial process. The short answer is everything's negotiable. There is no quote unquote set practice or standard in Michigan. Everything's negotiable between the seller and their agent, or the buyer and their agent. So I work with either side. My personal book of business is pretty evenly split. I work with, last year, my business was about 70% sellers and 30% buyers, or 65-35. It was right in that range.
Mhm.
Uh, but understanding how those fees work and being able to have that conversation with your realtor is important, because it's going to affect the entire rest of your experience in your negotiations. It can even affect some things on the lender's side. So it's a good conversation to have right away, even before you go out and start looking at a lot of homes, because you want to have that financial piece taken care of first, because it's really the engine, if you will. It's where the horsepower is of the entire process. And if the realtor doesn't really have a good grasp of how the finances take place throughout the transaction, they might negotiate you right out of a deal, because they might mess things up and have you in some form of terms contractually that the lender now can't obligate.
Mm. Hmm. So looking at just terms of the agent's uh, fee agreement, and how, I'm just trying to think how to summarize that, but how that could potentially impact um, negotiations when you go to close on a property.
Mhm.
Okay, good to know. All right, Chris. Well, is there anything else that you want to add to our conversation? Any questions that if you were going to hire a real estate agent to buy a house, that you would want to ask, or why, or anything like that?
No, this is these questions that you brought forth. They're really a good summary, because it allows, these are fine. And I think the biggest takeaway from this is, how does the agent address these, and are they willing to have these conversations? Because, and then listen to your gut. I mean,
Mhm.
everyone has a gut gauge, right? I feel good about this. I don't feel good about that. If something doesn't make sense, follow up on it further. You need to feel comfortable and assured that the person that you're working with as a realtor or an agent or a broker, that they're competent and ethical, and they're going to take care of you the way you need to be taken care of. Listen to your gut. It's a good takeaway there.
Okay. And just in case any of the people that are viewing this video want to get a hold of you for questions or hire you as their agent, would you mind sharing how they could get in contact with you, or do you want me to post that, or do you not want me to post that?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead and post it. That's absolutely fine, and I don't mind sharing it. My email is my first name, Chris N Broker, because I am one of the brokers at my office. Chris N Broker at gmail.com. Very easy. I usually respond the same day, and my phone number is 586-850-0400. That'll get you right to our front desk.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I appreciate your time, Chris. Thank you for that very insightful information. And if any of you guys have any questions, put them in the comments below, and I will try to address them myself. And like Chris said, you can always get a hold of him if you're looking to hire a real estate agent, buying, selling, all that good stuff. So thanks for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.